Hello, I'm RoboCharged, and welcome back to Manor Lords. In this video, I'm going to cover the basics of farming with 5 steps to get you growing crops and even farming sheep. So let's get right into it. There are 3 main types of crops in Manor Lords: emmer, otherwise known as wheat, flax, and barley. Using development skills, you can unlock rye as well, but it's basically just another kind of wheat, functionality-wise, that can grow better on less fertile soil. It's not really worth it in most cases, since it's a 2-point investment with orchardry coming first. For unlocking rye cultivation to make sense, your region must have an extreme lack of proper farmland, and you must be willing to spend a point to unlock the apple trees as well. Speaking of orchardry, once unlocked, you don't get to actually plant trees and arrange them like with fields. It just becomes another option for burgage plot extensions, the same way the vegetable gardens are. Now with all that out of the way, let's get to step number 1. When you are ready to get into farming, it's important to get set up before the end of summer, as the farmers need to start their work in the fall. I recommend waiting until year 2 to begin farming, as you don't want to overextend yourself too early and need time to build up enough families to run everything in your village. First, check the soil fertility for the different crop types using the build menu's overlays. I also think it best to choose just one crop type to start out with. Base it on what grows best in your region. Look for an area with at least yellow to work with, but obviously green is what you want if possible. It's ideal if you manage to find an area where the soil fertility overlaps with yellow or green for 2 or even 3 different types of crops. Definitely choose that area if you have it available nearby. Once you have decided on a location, place down 3 fields, each of around a half morgen in size. You can make them any shape you want. I'm just keeping them rectangular for simplicity in this demonstration. Using a 3-field system for each type of crop is the way to go, at least at first, to allow for crop rotation, which I'll go over shortly. Keeping the fields fairly small to start makes plenty of sense, since one family can manage to plow, plant, and harvest roughly about a half morgen worth of field area per year. And it doesn't cost anything to demolish the fields and replace them when you are ready to expand your operation later on. Next, build a farmhouse somewhere nearby and assign a family to begin working the fields. Come fall, they will automatically begin plowing and then sowing the fields, provided you selected a crop for them, which will be covered in step 3. You don't have to worry about acquiring any seeds for them to start. I actually took a while trying to figure out how to trade for some on my first farming attempt, but if sowing isn't completed before winter comes in December, the field will remain fallow for the whole year. During the spring and summer, the crops will grow. Once autumn comes around again, farmers will harvest the crops before they start the cycle over by plowing and sowing the fields. You may begin the harvest early, if you so choose, however, by selecting the Force Early Harvest button, and the menu will show you when a field is fully grown. By default, all fields are set to fallow, so you have to click on each field and select what you want the farmers to sow before they will even start plowing it. For this example, I'm going to be using wheat. Planting in the same field in back-to-back years will reduce the fertility and yield of a given field. The easiest option to avoid that is to rotate your crops. To do that, open each of your field menus and select them to crop rotation. Then use the drop-down lists to choose what to grow each year. This setup allows for all 3 fields to maintain their fertility while always keeping one active that is small enough to be managed by one family each year. That's why it's best to have 3 smaller fields rather than one big one per crop when starting out. When you are ready to grow another type of crop, just repeat these first 3 steps for each type. It could mean needing to place the next 3 fields in a different location based on your region's fertility zones. In that case, you will need to build another farmhouse with an assigned family to go with it. But if it happens to be nearby, you can just add another family to the existing farmhouse. Don't worry if you don't have good farming soil for all 3 main crops. Just expand your existing fields and continue to grow more of what you can. Then you can sell the extra yields with a trading post and import what you can't grow well. Now there are 2 big development skills worth getting when you are ready to really get serious with your farming setup, probably by year 3 or 4. The first is the heavy plow, which will basically double the field area a family can manage each year by adding a plowing station to your farmhouse. You can then assign an ox to assist with plowing and moving crops. And the next one is called fertilization, which allows for fallow fields to be used as pastures by your sheep. This will restore fallow fields' fertility much faster and allow you to use a more advanced 3-field system that features 2 types of crops instead of just 1. That is the system that was used in medieval times, and the rotation ideally looks like this. You will be able to bring in harvests of 2 types of crops each year, with 1 field always used as a pasture, getting its fertility restored. The sheep improve the fallow field's fertility enough that you can get away with planting on a field in back-to-back years, provided you aren't using the same crop type back-to-back. This does work best, however, in a location where the soil fertility somewhat overlaps for 2 different types of crops, like I mentioned in step 1. Each type of crop will need to be processed differently after it has been harvested. For that, you will need various additional buildings with spare families to assign to them. This is why I suggest waiting until year 2 to farm and starting off with small fields and just 1 crop. You need time to grow into having enough families available to run everything associated with it. For wheat, you will need to build a windmill and a communal oven. Wheat will first get threshed at the farmhouse and turned into grain. I like to turn the threshing priority to low to make sure the farmers bring in all of the harvested wheat from the field before they start threshing. From there, it will be taken to the windmill and be turned into flour, and then baked into bread at the communal oven. Flax requires you to build a weaver workshop in order to turn your flax into linen. Linen produces basic clothing, but can also be turned into gambesons if you have a tailor's workshop artisan set up in your village on a level 2 burgage plot. They will also make other types of clothes if you have access to dye from a dyer's workshop and yarn from sheep farming. And for barley, a malt house is needed to process it into malt. After that, you'll also need a brewery, which can be added to a level 2 burgage plot to produce ale. And finally, a tavern is also necessary, along with a family to work it and serve the ale. Now, while there are the burgage plot extensions for chickens and goats, which produce eggs and hides, and horses, mules, and oxen exist in the game for various tasks, when it comes to actual livestock farming, sheep are pretty much the extent of it at the moment in early access Manor Lords. So let's take a quick look at how sheep farming works. The first thing you need to do in order to acquire any sheep is to build a livestock trading post. Then build a pasture along with a sheep farm. Next, assign a family to the livestock trading post and import the desired amount of sheep. They cost 30 regional wealth each, or 20 per lamb. Once purchased, you can just wait for the sheep to arrive and get sent into the pasture. Now you can unassign the family from the livestock trading post and assign them to the sheep farm. It's definitely a big help to unlock the sheep breeding development skill for this. Once you have that, the number of your sheep will grow over time, even if you only start with a single one. But it does happen very slowly, at least at first, so it's best to start out with more, maybe 3 or 4 if you can afford it. I should note that lambs are just basically cheaper sheep that take a year to grow and start producing wool. The assigned family will shear sheep and collect wool, except for in the winter. A weaver's workshop is needed here as well to convert the wool into yarn. You can then export the wool in the trading post and use it in the tailor's workshop to make cloaks, although that will also require a dye workshop, which makes dye out of berries. You can also sell excess sheep in the livestock trading post. A good way to go about that is setting the desired surplus number to the same as your pasture size, so that you never have more sheep than your pasture can accommodate. Well, that about covers all the basics regarding farming in Manor Lords. I hope you enjoyed the video, and may your harvest be plentiful. Thanks for watching, and until next time, take care.